brick sculptors, and welcome back to Brick Sculpt. This is Chris, and today I've got a video that hopefully will show you a little bit of my creative process. Now there's a couple things in Lego that for whatever reason my mind kind of obsesses over. Things that I want to build and rebuild again for whatever reason, just because I feel like I can keep adding more detail. A good example of this is the ultimate pine tree I did a couple of videos on a little while ago. Well, one thing I've consistently tried to improve on is bookshelves. I've always felt that the bookshelf is a very detailed piece of furniture that's fun to add to Lego builds, but there's definitely a wide range of skill levels that you can build one at. And so I've built several bookshelves here that I want to show you to hopefully demonstrate kind of how I work through my creative process and improve along the way. So I'm going to show these bookshelves, and as I go, they're going to get hopefully better and better and more detailed. And hopefully these techniques will help you guys out in your builds as well. Now the first bookshelf I built here is this one. It's pretty simple. It uses shelves, which are just plates and tiles, and then snot pieces to hold these plates in sideways, creating all the different books. Now this is a very simple design, and obviously right away this looks fairly basic. It kind of looks like a Minecraft bookshelf. It's very blocky, very chunky, very thick, and very flat. There's not any texture to this. And there's lots of ways we can improve on a bookshelf like this, and that's what we're going to kind of walk through here today. But this is the basic design that I started with and worked out from here. Now the first thing I thought of that I could use to improve this bookshelf is the thickness of the shelves themselves. You see, because of the snot technique used here, I had to have a layer of tile to float these plates over. So we have 2 plate thickness on each of the shelves, which makes the bookshelf overly chunky and tall looking. So the first thing I thought I'd do is eliminate that 2 plate thickness and get it down to 1 plate. Now that's not as easy as it looks, but here we have done it. And the way we did that, we had to use some different pieces in here. We no longer could use a plate with a tile on top, so we had to have a plate that had partial connection points and tile on top. Now the piece that helped with that are these here, these plates that had 2 studs on them and tile on the other side. And then for our books, we had to go from 2x2 plates to 1x2 plates, which will allow us to use this portion and put kind of a back on it. The Technic pieces are not necessary. I was just short on 1x8 gray bricks. But overall, this looks quite a bit better already. It is 4 plates shorter than the original design just because we thinned each of these shelves out by 1. So it sits shorter, more compact. The shelves look better, but there's still plenty of problems with this design. It's still flat and texture free and quite chunky still. So what's the best way we can break this up and give it some texture? Now my initial thought was, okay, when you have a bookshelf, the books generally don't go from the bottom of the shelf all the way to the bottom of the top shelf. There's usually a gap there. So I was going to kind of bring it back to this height, but incorporate gaps above the books. That's step 1. Step 2 was, we need to basically make the books look a little better. Using just basic plates is great and gives you a variety of colors, but it's very texture free. It's flat and boring. So how are we going to add texture? Well, you can see a clue here in this design. You see at a certain point in here, we have snot on both sides, and we have to use tile in the middle. Now tile has a little different characteristic than plates do. Tile has a thumbnail lip, so you can pull it up. Plates don't. And those little thumbnail lips on each of the tiles, you can pick them out here, give it just the tiniest bit of texture that the plates don't have. Now, unfortunately, we can't fill this whole thing with tile because there's no way to connect it, but there is a piece that has the same look from the side and does have a connection point, and that is the jumper plate. So in our next design here, we switched all the plates out with jumper plates, which gives it a lot of texture. They look like the edges of books a lot more because it's not just flat and seamless with the one next to it. You also get a little bit of a rounded edge underneath and on top, which gives it a really good look. And then we did add in those gaps to give it a little bit more space. And this now is about the height of the top one. I did thin the top out as well, so it's not quite as tall, but very close. but much better looking. It's got so much less of that flat, boring look to it, and it's got a lot more texture to it. Now from here, I figured I could still improve this. This still is kind of missing some texture here, and I thought, well, what else could I use in a shelf to kind of make this stick out in front even a little bit more, so it looks like it's holding the books. Now there was one piece in particular that jumped out at me that said, oh, this would be perfect for a bookshelf, and that is this sliding door piece. It has a nice lip along the front, and while it has a smooth front section and studs in the back, just like the pieces we're currently using for our shelves here. So this would work absolutely perfect. So we take our next design here, and if we incorporate these, you'll see that it sticks out in front and gives it a little bit more texture and a much more realistic look. I'll run some tiles here across the top. I'll finish it off nicely. That's a pretty good looking bookshelf. I don't love these little gaps on the end, but if that's the biggest problem, I'm okay with that. The other thing I did was I mixed up the books a little bit. You'll notice I have some wide books and skinny books. For the wide books, I used masonry bricks. When you take masonry bricks and turn them on their side, and then use the siding side, you have a nice widely spaced set of lines, which makes for a great looking series of books. Now the one drawback to the masonry bricks is your books have to be in pairs, because each masonry brick is going to have 2 books on it. So you see I have 2 white ones here, 4 dark tan ones, and 6 dark gray ones. But they look much more like volumes, maybe like you'd see in an encyclopedia or something like that. This is pretty good looking, but I still think there's one thing we could improve on this. Everything looks good through the shelves and the books, but the sides are still quite chunky. And though it's not terrible, I thought I could do better. So I experimented around with it, and I came up with a technique where I could attach plate on the side instead of using those snot pieces. Now this required a few extra things. I still used the same shelves in the middle, I still used the same book techniques here, but I had to figure out how to attach these without any snot connections like I had with this. So I still need to get the books in there and find a way to put these sides on there. And the way I did that was an intricate mix of snot pieces up the side. I made a little demonstrator here to show you how I did that, because it takes a very unique set of pieces to do it. You'll see at the bottom here we start with a plate, and then we have a normal 1x1 snot piece. In a previous video I called this a D-snot piece, and it kind of sounded like I said D-snot, so for now on that's a D-snot piece. And then we have a 1x1 plate, another shelf, a double snot piece on top of a 1x1 plate, another shelf, 1x1 plate, 1x1 snot piece, D-snot, and then a tile on the top. And using that arrangement, I can take a 6-long plate, stick it right to the side here, going all the way to the bottom. I wanted this to look like kind of an adjustable foot tucked in under the edge of the side, like you would often see on like office furniture and stuff. This is obviously more of a utility, like a library type bookshelf, not so much something you'd see in someone's house. And that's how we got our sides on there. Now on this, I didn't have 6 long gray tiles, so I need to order those if I want to finish this off properly, but this works good enough and looks pretty good still, having them like this in 3 pieces. Now I also had an idea, what if I want to do some really thick books? Well, check this out. I'm going to pull this section out here. And I can use ingots. Now I had to make kind of this funny angled piece here because I had to get around this, but if you put it in here you wouldn't have to do that. And we can use ingots to make some really thick binded books, maybe like a large book of maps or something. I think those look absolutely fantastic in there. Just again, mixing up the sizes of books, the colors, the variations. Really like how that turned out. So I was pretty happy with this design, but I was building this and I was thinking, okay, this looks really good. This would be awesome in a little library or an office building. But what about like a wood version? Like this is very industrial. This is definitely something more for a library than something you might see in a house. So I had to try to build a wood one, And this is what I came up with. And I also stuck to very classic colors in here, like something you might see in a law office or an office in a home. I've got a couple different colors of wood here using spindles down the side. And then I have the large volumes on the bottom, mostly bigger volumes, and in series, you have several of the same color, meaning they all belong together. I think this turned out absolutely fantastic. I had to do a couple things to accomplish this. I couldn't attach to the spindles just like in this one. So the technique I used was right here. I basically had to take a snot piece and an L-shaped plate, and I could run all the books off of that, floating them in the middle of those two spindles. It's the same thing I did in this build here. As for the shelves themselves, it's basically the same design as this. I think that turned out really cool. Well, I hope you guys found this informative. I hope that you can use some of these techniques and designs in your own LEGO cities and MOCs. If you have any questions, please leave them below. I'll do my best to answer them. If you like this video, please like and subscribe. We'll do more just like this in the future. That's all I have for this time, and we will see you next time.